For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thanks for tuning in at thescribbleshow.com and on your favorite podcast app. Gotta tell you, boy, did we have a great week last week with the episode. We had a 2-hour supersized Scribble. And in case you missed it, first off, sucks to be you. But the great thing with technology is that you can go back and listen to it anyway. But we had, it was a coronavirus-related episode. Now, again, we didn't have just the same story over and over and over again, right? Of there needs to be more testing. Oh, no. We didn't do that. We covered a bunch of different topics. So we had Dr. Phil on talking about relationships and how relationships are really being pushed to the limit with this whole isolation thing. So Dr. Phil talked relationships. We had Dr. Oz go on a little bit about some medical stuff. Now, here's what's interesting, though, is that we had pre-taped Dr. Oz before Friday's airing. Well, it turns out that he ended up walking back his comments on that Hydra blah, 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 medication thing that he was rah-rah sis-boom-bah for. So we were sort of out of date on that one, but it worked in our favor because he was getting called out for his sidestepping it or his rebuttal or his, I don't know what the word is. Anyway, so we kind of had a bit of controversy because we had run this interview with him saying rah-rah hydroclona something, and meanwhile, either the day before or the same day, he sort of walked it back and was like, well, I actually don't think that it's da-da-da-da, because, tests proved him wrong, I guess, according to the experts. So anyway, so Dr. Oz was on. We had Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil. Super Nanny Joe Frost was on talking about parenting, because now all of a sudden your home has been doubled as a classroom, basically, or doubled as a school. You got gym outside, you've got classroom, in the kitchen. So Joe was talking about how, parents and also even the kids can get through the isolation, though it seems like isolation isn't lasting for much longer, depending on where you live. We had dog whisperer Cesar Milan on, because I wondered, what is this doing to our pets? Now that we're all around 24/7, when we all of a sudden suddenly have to go back to work and leave them all day, is that going to mess with their minds? What's going to happen, right? The dogs are creatures of habit, right? They get into those patterns. Well, how are dogs going to react when suddenly everybody leaves them again? So Cesar Milan was on there. We had Bob Harper from The Biggest Loser talking about how to stay fit and active while you're in lockdown. See, what's interesting is that when this whole isolation thing started, or quarantine started, there was a bit of a novelty because it was like, hey, I can be home now. It's basically like a 2-week vacation. I'm being paid to stay home, depending on your situation, of course. And then the novelty wore off. When you're a month into it, 6, 7, 8 weeks into it, you're kind of like, all right, maybe I'm going a bit stir crazy now. And that's when you start to order food recklessly, right? You're not making the best eating habits. It's just easier to use your app and have food brought to your door than battle the crowds at the supermarket and hope that they have the food that you're wanting. So Bob was talking about just ways to stay active and some advice. My big question was, if I don't feel hungry, should I be eating? That's always a big debate when it comes to health and fitness experts, right? So Bob answered that question as well. Now, to have some laughs, we then had Wendy Liebman on, comedian Wendy Liebman. You might remember her from America's Got Talent. I know her from the comedy scene back in the day when she was doing Johnny Carson's show and The Late Show with David Letterman. She's been around for a while, and I loved her her delivery when I was Oh, how old was I? Well, I still love it anyway, so it doesn't matter how old I was. She's just got this really unique style, and so Wendy joined us to have some laughs, and our friend Ben Mulrooney from E-Talk on CTV was talking about how he's staying busy, and what he's streaming, what he's watching, how often is he wearing pajamas. You know, he's still hosting his daily show from home sometimes in a studio. So Ben was talking about that, and yeah, it was a full show. I basically, just sort of took 4 minutes to tell you about what happened on the 2-hour program, but definitely it was great to get some insight and just have some casual conversation, have some chit chat. I was very surprised. I think I mentioned it briefly when I was talking with Mulrooney, but when Dr. Phil, when we were just about to go live with his segment, I said to him, we'll plug the shows that you're doing, and he said, you know what, this isn't about me and my self-promotion. This is about helping your audience and your listeners get through the tough times. So I thought that was really incredible. That was the first time that Dr. Phil has been on the radio with me, or I guess on the podcast. Oh no, he was on the radio with me as well. Anyway, so it's interesting how this whole pandemic is bringing people to the surface and saying, you know what, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. So I appreciate all of the guests who joined me and all the people who listened and our new subscribers, because apparently we had a really, really good spike in traffic and listenership. So thank you so much for tuning in and enjoying it. Now, after that 5-minute recap, let's talk about what's coming up on today's show. He won Canadian Idol back in the day, and Canadian Idol was the first television show, or the first red carpet that I ever covered, and Theo Tams has a new music video out. It's a song from his album that was put out, I think it was 2 years ago, right? 2018, called The Doctor. And Theo is going to talk about the inspiration to that video, because he has more looks than I think I have ever had in my life. If you haven't seen the video, check it out on YouTube. And Theo is going to be joining us. And it's always tricky when you have somebody from one of these shows, because they become pigeonholed, right? I'm the guy from Canadian Idol, right? But at the same time, that's also the show that kind of made you who you are, right? So I'm interested to hear from Theo. I have not spoken with him since the red carpet on Canadian Idol, which I have to think back now was probably, oh my God, at least 10 years ago. Probably about 12 years ago. Maybe about 12 years ago is when Theo was on the radio with me, and we were live from Toronto. So we'll be chatting with him. I believe he still is in the Toronto area. I am holed up in Winnipeg right now, but still in Canada nonetheless. So looking forward to reconnecting with Theo. Now, speaking of Canada, there was a tragedy a couple of weeks ago in Nova Scotia. It made worldwide headlines, and it wasn't until a couple days after the tragedy that the media and the public started asking questions about the police response. Now, I'm gonna share my thoughts and my opinion on that coming up right after this here on the Scribble.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on the Scribble. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time. As we like to say, this is 30 minutes of time-wasting fun, and right now, you can spare the 30 minutes, let's be honest. Before the break, I mentioned about the tragic mass shooting in Nova Scotia that happened a couple of weeks ago, and in the moment, see, this is where the media has a different reaction and response, right? The media in the moment is saying, this is a fast-paced story. It's developing right now. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going on. Get the cameras. Get a reporter. Let's just get out there and capture it. And it's only when you sort of you come back to the studio, or the dust settles, or the scene, the situation is over, that you kind of now start to connect the dots and make connections with things. So what happened with this situation, if you're not in Canada, which obviously the story made bigger headlines in Canada than it did elsewhere in the world. But this started playing out on a Saturday night, okay, in Nova Scotia, East Coast. And many hours had gone by, and this guy was on the loose, pitch black in the darkness in the middle of the night, and went on a killing spree, was setting fires, and again, the investigation is continuing, so I'm not concluding anything by saying this. But certainly the public then had questions because a lot of people only found out about it Sunday morning that, wait a second, there's this crazed gunman who's, and I'll use the word terrorist, maybe not in the legal or policing sense, but I'll use the word terrorist. He's running rampant through communities and leaving bloodshed and burning buildings in his wake. And the police, the RCMP in Nova Scotia, used Twitter at 5 a.m. to let people know that there was potential trouble. Now, Canada has this emergency alert system that was tested, I would say, maybe almost 2 years ago. And when the test happened the first time, most Canadian cell phone users did not get the alert on their phone. So it was this big, scandalous story that, like, why do we have this thing? Wait a second. So you're testing this thing, and it doesn't work. That's like the biggest flop you could ever have. So they go back to the drawing board, they make some changes or whatever, and then some people were saying, wait a second, why is my weather app the one that's giving me an alert about a missing child? Like, this is very strange. Why does the Weather Network have this? One thing to send me a note on the Weather Network because there's a tornado a-comin', but, and so when people got the first actual alert, right, so this was when a kid had gone missing. This was sent out to people across Canada in the middle of the night, and it blared. Phones were blaring, scaring the crap out of people. And many, one, in the middle of the night, were scared shitless. And two, then sort of, again, connecting the dots, they were reconciling what happened the next morning at work when they were groggy and tired because they didn't sleep. Well, why the hell did I get this when I'm 3 provinces, 4 provinces, 6 provinces over? What was the point of this emergency alert? And it angered people. People were saying, I don't care that some kid ran away from home at 10 p.m. across the country. Why do I need to know that? And so people are making that comparison, saying, wait a second, here's a perfect example, not necessarily all of Canada, but here's perhaps an entire province that might want to know in the middle of the night, hey, there's somebody literally in your backyard. Your house could be on fire if this guy keeps, running wild. And so an emergency alert was not sent out. Now, police at a press conference in the days following seemed very uncertain, very hesitant, almost unable to answer a lot of the questions, which, of course, that makes reporters go, all right, we're jumping on this. Like, they see a crack in your story or your hesitancy, media's going to pick away and get more information on that. So I knew right away what was going to happen. I knew the police were going to be destroyed for this. Now, the police came out and said, we were working on a message, but then the gunman was dead. Okay, so wait a second. So this was almost 12 hours had passed. You thought to go to Twitter at 5 a.m, which, if you're using Twitter as your official means of communication, when we have this whole platform whose purpose is to alert communities of danger, right? Emergency alert system. You use Twitter. Who in their right mind, and yes, there are probably people who work shifts or who are insomniacs or whatever who might be scrolling Twitter at 5 a.m, but let's agree that this would be an alert that I'd want to be woken up in the middle of the night for. Okay, maybe he's not down the street from me, but if he's 10 miles away or I have family that's living in that community that's 10 miles away, I could accept a blaring message at 5 a.m. to wake me up on a Sunday. That's just me. Now, it then had people wondering, what takes so long to craft a message? Were you waiting on a literary scholar or an author to come and proofread it? What, yes, you might not have all of the details in that moment, but you knew there was a crazed gunman on the loose. Of course, you're not going to use the wording crazed gunman on the loose, right? But you can articulate a message. You knew the gist of it. In 2 sentences, you can summarize what is happening. And you can give us that message of take cover, lock your doors, stay in your home, that kind of a thing. Again, at 5 a.m, generally people are going to be sleeping. But the thing is that in these communities, we're hearing that people would often go to bed without locking their doors. So if you're going to wake me up at 5 a.m. to say, hey, wait a second, this is not a test. This is not some kid who ran away from home. Your life is potentially in danger. Lock your doors. Well, goddamn, I want that message. And I don't care how miserable it makes me the next day because I got no sleep. I'm going to be grateful for that emergency alert system. So the RCMP in Nova Scotia raked over the coals by the media in the days following. And of course, in the tragedy, they did lose a member of their team. And so, of course, we can't gloss over that, right? There was tragedy that struck, the RCMP and people all over Nova Scotia. I'm certainly not minimalizing that, but certainly the response, right? And I don't know that nowadays the public is not going to accept, well, we didn't see this coming. We weren't expecting this. You know what? They said the same thing in Tabor, Alberta. Tabor, Alberta, most people had never heard of until 1999 when there was a school shooting there. Tabor, Alberta was an unknown name, and suddenly you're a household name because of what happened. Well, you can't say that we didn't think it would never happen here. Maybe they could use that excuse back then, 20-some years ago. Not now. You know, we even the governments that are trying to do that with the coronavirus. Yeah, you might not know to the extent of how much damage this virus would do, but look at the contestants on Big Brother. They're told to expect the unexpected. Why wouldn't the people leading our countries have to have that mentality? Yeah, you can't prepare for every single thing that's possible, but if it's going to be considered, a global pandemic or a national tragedy like a shooting, yeah, you can prepare for that. They need to have the training. You might not have the resources in the moment, but you need to have the training and how to react and how to respond and how to keep the public safe. Send me your thoughts. Tell me if you agree or disagree. Live at jbonair.com. Live at jbonair.com. That was sort of a heavy segment. We're going to lighten things up with Theo Tams right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Canadian Idol winner Theo Tams has a new video out, and he's joining us on the line to talk about it. Hi, Theo.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, like the rest of us.
Well, yeah. You know what? And that's the thing, is that music can get people through a lot of things, as we know. And first off, I actually have to say, there's a picture of you and me on the studio wall behind me, and it was on the red carpet at the Idol finale in Toronto. I look much older now, and you have so many different looks that I never even thought I would see.
Yeah. I mean, especially in that video, for sure.
Let's
a chameleon of sorts.
That's it. So let's talk about this, because the song's been out for a while, but you just put out the video, and you've got a whole bunch of new looks. So tell me about the video's concept first.
Okay,
for the last song.
We did it for my song, The Last Song.
Right.
Which originally, when we were releasing Call the Doctor, the EP, the last song wasn't even meant to be on it. We were only going to do 6 songs. And then I was with the whole team in the studio having a bit of a listening party. We were trying to narrow it down to those 6. And at the very end, just before everyone kind of left, I said, you know what? I was like, I have one more. I'm just going to show you. It was only a voice note at that point. We didn't even have a proper demo for it. And so I played them the last song, and everyone kind of, fell in love with it and said, okay, I guess we're doing 7 songs now. So I knew already then that I wanted to have some kind of visual representation for the song. The song's just kind of about, being in a really rough relationship, emotionally. And for me, I kind of felt like I was trying to be everything and everyone just to please this individual, and kind of recognizing at the end that no matter who I was, it was never going to be enough. So we kind of wanted to depict that visually. So we kind of, I decided on about 14 different characters kind of to play. Everything from like the hippie stoner guy to, I did drag, which was a really intense experience. We had like this really tough fighter guy. So it really was just trying to tap into all of those different personas of everything I tried to be, in that relationship. So, yeah.
You mentioned that everybody has relationships that, haunt them. What is it about a certain relationship that makes it become a song? What makes it song worthy?
I mean, I've always written from personal experience. This was a song that I've been trying to write for the better part of a decade. I always just felt like the subject matter is important, and I think it's especially something that men don't do often is sing about, that type of vulnerability. So that was something that I just felt was important, and there was a purpose behind it. And I think since the song's been released, since that EP came out, that is the song that seems to be resonating the most with the audience. And that's the song that I'm getting, messages from people on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter, just, thank you for writing this song. And a lot of guys, too, which is awesome. So I think that even though it was such a personal song for me, I think that the message is really universal. I think that we've all had that one relationship, not necessarily even a romantic relationship, but we all have that one person that has made us feel like we will never be enough. And we all want to write that one last song for that person and finally close that chapter.
Mm-hmm. I guess that goes back to what I said at the beginning, is that music helps people get through almost anything, really.
Yeah, I think so. There's so much power in that. It's been amazing for me to, even since the videos come out, to kind of see the response from people and the messages from people. And like I said, just them relating to that song in an avenue that I never expected as the writer.
Which is your favorite look in the video? I have to know.
Well, I didn't, the drag look was really intense, but I was just like, damn, I look cute. The drag one was a lot of fun, but I think my favorite, the most effective for me was the completely clean-shaven look, only because I'm never completely clean-shaven. I always have a beard. I always have scruff for the last probably 12 years. So to me, that's the one that kind of hits home for me. I think that it was the most honest, and there was nothing really to hide behind there. Mm-hmm. So when I watch it back, that's the one that kind of captures my attention the most.
I like the suit and tie one.
Yeah, I can rock a suit too.
And let's rewind to winning Canadian Idol. I think that you were. I've got to look behind me. You're sort of dressed. You're wearing a suit jacket anyway. Everyone always wonders what happens after this show, and so there's some really good things and then maybe some bad things. What was the best thing about winning Idol? And I don't want to use the word worst, but I guess in terms of opposites, best and worst. What were
you
the?
Can use it. Yeah.
Okay, what were the? Go ahead then.
I think the best thing is just, I was a little bit luckier, I think, because I was a little bit older when I was on the show. I was the last winner of Canadian Idol, so I could kind of see what the other winners had done in their careers and kind of had a bit more of an idea of what my trajectory would be. So my expectations, I think, were maybe a little bit more realistic. I think the best thing is that it's put me in touch with and helped me build connections to still be a working musician in a really, really hard industry, which was, at the end of the day, really my only goal that I knew I really wanted to have satisfied. Obviously, I have goals that go far beyond that. But it's surrounded me with a team that I think really understands my vision for the music that I want to create. And there's not a lot of compromise there, which I think for artists nowadays, I think that that's really rare. On the flip side of that, I think the worst thing is that there are still so many people in the industry that will see me as nothing more than a talent show winner. So I think that is something that I will have to constantly deal with. I will always have to, that show was 12 years ago, and I'm promoting now my third album, or the third single from the third album, and I'm still being asked about Canadian Idol. So I think that that's just a badge that I have to wear, and you just have to find the way to wear that badge in a way that's going to work for you the best.
A lot of people don't fully understand the recording industry, or even show business, really, when they go on a show like Idol. What was the biggest learning curve? If you could give somebody advice, I guess the music industry has also changed since then, right? Because now there's social media, there's everything. But what would be some advice that you would give somebody, preparing to get into the industry now?
I would say the biggest thing is know exactly what type of art or music or whatever your vice is. Know exactly what you want to do, and try to find people that champion that and that are committed to your vision. I think for me, one of the hardest things about steering the first 2 or 3 years after winning Canadian Idol was there were so many different voices, often working on the same team, but had different ideas of where I should take my career. And I think that really stifled it. I think that the growth was at a slower rate because of that. So I think, know exactly what you want to do and find people that are willing to help you push that vision forward.
How have you changed as an artist? Anybody who's done a craft for any length of time, whether that's an author, a chef, right? Everybody grows and improves with time. How have you changed as an artist since those early days from Canadian Idol?
I think that I don't take myself as seriously anymore. I think that that's really helped kind of open the doors to experimenting with new sounds and new subjects. And, for a long time I'd be in the studio and we'd be writing a song and I'd be fully into it and I'd be like, oh, this is so cool. And then at the end of the song I'd be like, but we should pitch it to someone else because I can't do that. It's not what I do. And, or I'm not cool enough to pull that off or something. There was always excuses and always a wall to not go there. If it wasn't some, haunting piano ballad, then it wasn't for me. So I think I've just learned to say yes more and be like, why not? Why isn't that something that I can play around with? And I think that people are going to hear that on the new music that's coming out later this year. It was meant to be in the summer. We might have to push it to the fall, just, given the state of everything. But I think that, just learning to say yes more to things that I normally would have passed on.
And you said yes to drag. I mean, come on.
I know. I'm unstoppable now.
There's no getting in his way, everybody. So tell us about the new music. What can we expect?
I think it's going to be something that I haven't done before. I've worked with every different project that I do. I try to work with new people, new producers. I feel like there's some people that find a producer that clicks and they stay with them their whole career. For me, it's always been something that I like to switch that up. It keeps me on my toes. It keeps me creative. And this is probably my favorite music that I've ever created. We really dove into some old school R&B and like Motown sounds, but kept it really, really current and fresh. And it's just, there's a lot more, I feel like there's a lot more attitude behind this, the new music. It's not as introspective. It's a little more in your face, which is cool for me because I haven't really done that before.
What's your favorite part of the business or the industry? Is it the writing? Is it being in the studio and producing and listening to playback or shooting the videos? Which do you like the most?
By far, my favorite is the writing process and being in the studio and being creative. I feel like even when I'm not in the studio, I'm always writing. I mean, my phone is always full of lyrics and voice notes, and I think that's where my creativity lies is in the writing side of things. So it's nice to kind of be at the point in my career where we're starting to pitch songs to other artists, and I mean, I would say the writing process for sure.
So this isn't one of those things where you need to, escape to the cottage for a week away from everyone and just hunker down and write. This is, if it comes to me while I'm in the Uber, then I just start writing.
100%. It's one of the things that I learned shortly after the show from a couple of my favorite mentors was to just constantly be writing. Writing doesn't have to be in a studio. Writing doesn't have to be when you sit down at your piano or sit down with your guitar. You can be writing constantly. So there's been a lot of times, exactly, where I've been in an Uber, I've been on the subway, or I've been out for dinner with my partner, and often I'll just take my phone out and I'll quickly record like a 6 or 7 second voice note, just so that I don't forget it. And then when I do go into the studio, I have, this plethora of small ideas and tidbits that I can kind of, throw together. So it was a learning curve to me to know that writing doesn't have to be done in one way.
Right. So I do have a request then. Since Mulrooney and I were there from the beginning with you, backup singers maybe on a track, or, could we, it's just,
I mean, I'll give you an audition.
Oh, wow, everybody. Wow. See? Diva. Full diva now at this point. But, no, I probably wouldn't be able to say. He probably...
No, I'll give you you can do... Next time I shoot music video. You can have a cameo.
All right. Okay, I'm going to hold it. We've got this on audio recording now, by the way, everybody. So if he goes back on this.
You can play my love interest.
Ooh, blushing now. Okay, so where can people get more information about your upcoming projects? Website, social media?
Social media is probably the best. Hit me up on Instagram at TheoTamsMusic. Super active on Facebook as well, so either of those.
Okay, Theo, I'm going to Instagram a picture of us in a few minutes, so watch for that, okay?
I will.
All right. Canadian Idol winner and drag superstar Theo Tams, thanks so much for joining us today.
Cheers. Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
Jeremy Bradley back here on The Scribble. My thanks to Theo Tams for joining us. Feel free to give me a shout anytime, live at jbonair.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat